Can I get a mic check, and can I verify that you can see VS Code and my browser? Cool, thanks. All right, so we're gonna just start out with our basic page. Body, and then if we were to, does it allow me to navigate? So okay, yeah, so this is what I was referring to as an index. Like back in the day, this is what people's pages or servers look like, and it's an index of everything on their file server. And I think that's where this term index came from. So you kind of navigate through their server, and eventually get to some picture or some document or something. But let's open up our. Let me know if it's too small. I'm trying to gain some space. Maybe we can make this a little bigger for now. Okay, so let's start with something so we can start styling it. And again, I'm going to use color since that's the easiest to see and get feedback on. Okay, cascading style sheets. There's 3 ways of adding style to your website. I'm gonna go through each one, but there's one that is kind of recommended. So it's inline, internal, and external. So let's go through internal. Let's go through inline. So inline, you're writing the style inline to your HTML element. Hopefully this works. So this is inline and red. Okay, let's make this a little bigger since it's a small page. Okay, so that's inline. The problem with inline is if you wanted your list to be completely red, you would have to do a lot of copy and pasting, either style the entire list red or copy and paste each list item or something else. And it's similar to like hard coding in when you're programming a software. You just really don't want to kind of hard code everywhere. You kind of want to reuse as much as possible, and that's kind of why inline is kind of shunned upon. Although there is cases where you want to do it, and newer technologies where you use classes. Anyway, yeah, don't worry about that. I heard of ping. I didn't look like there was anything in the chat, but it'll be. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. Okay, so the next one after inline is internal. So internally styled. And then let's make this blue. So we added a class, but the class isn't defined. Oh, maybe this will help. Make it a little. Yeah, let me know if I get too small. I'm trying to manage the space. So where you would put the internal is in the head, and you have a style tag. Actually, I forgot the syntax. CSS internal. Okay, so we did inline. So it gets really messy really quick if you keep on doing inline. Okay. And then the next one is internal. So you just put the CSS straight in. And I'll go over the syntax in a bit. So we want to select a class that is named internally styled, and then define declarations for it. And here we're going to say blue. And now if we refresh the page, we should see it blue. So this is internal. It's internal to the page. So the problem with this is if you have other pages, the other pages won't pick up this style because it's scoped just to this one page that we're on. And if we were to do that, a sibling page, sibling page, nothing's in here, but at least we didn't error out. We'll throw in our page, refresh, and here you'll see that our style, even though it's defined in the index, doesn't get picked up in the sibling. Okay, so the last, so that's internal. The last way to include styles is externally. So we can create a some file with the .css extension. Just call it. Let's just call it styles. I don't know. And if we were to put the same CSS rule, I think they call it, into the style, then when we include this style into our page, it should work. So to do this, we need another style, and I forget the syntax. So we need something like this. So not style at all. Okay, so we're including. Oh, let's fix the name, the file name. So we're including all the styles in this styles.css file into this page, and that's what's going on here. So we refresh and take a look at our, what the browser is acknowledging. So here is internally styled. So this is line 4 about index.html. So that's right here. So oops. So this is getting picked up, but it's also picking up the styles. Maybe I can put this here. It's also picking up this one. And you notice that it is overriding the external is overriding the internal one because we have it defined after So the order matters, but there's actually a better way to avoid conflict. So we refresh and I change the order. The internal style is overriding the the external style. And then okay, so let's do the same thing for the second page and see it working here. Okay, so let's actually make it where it makes sense. So we want to call this externally styled, and let's make this green. And then we'll give the class of externally styled to the third item. And this should be green. And I did something wrong. Oh. Styled. Wait. Okay, yeah, this is sibling place, sorry. It's here. So the index, we have all three styled. And then to get the style onto the sibling, we need to actually add the class attribute to the third item. Here, we'll see that the third one is colored. So any questions, comments, concerns on that so far? So that's how you bring in styles. And let's talk about the syntax here. So CSS, the basic syntax. Let's see, can we do it here? This is this thing. It's quite better. Okay, so you have this one. You have the selector. So the H1 is a selector, and an outclass is a class with the internally styled, anything with an internally styled class. And then you have the declarations. So we have one here, but we could actually, we can actually add more. So you can put font size, and there's just a ton that you can use. And again, what I listed on the web pages and your exercises are kind of the more common ones. But there's a ton, and I wouldn't try to learn everything. Just whatever you need, learn it as you need it. Okay, so it's very simple syntax. There's no loops. There's no if else. It's kind of like a true or false, and if it's true, you apply these styles or declarations. And so that's CSS syntax. The next big thing is specificity. Okay, so let's go see this. So initially we had both of them let's have a conflicting style here. So both the style sheet and the internal style is targeting this internally styled class. So any element with this internally styled class. And let's make this aqua. So what we saw at first, when they're the same, whatever's defined last wins. So we were to make it aqua, we'll put it after. So hence overriding the previous declaration. But that can be really confusing, especially if you have a ton of styles and it just gets really brittle. So CSS has this specificity way of ordering which style overrides which styles. So in a nutshell, there's a way of calculating it. But in a nutshell, the more specific your selector is, the higher ranking it is. So more specific styles will override less specific styles. And ID, so here is saying that inline and ID is weighted more heavily than like just classes and elements. So let's see if we can do it on one page. Okay, so you understand the order. I'm gonna take this out of the style sheet and put it, actually, I can do it here actually. There you can see both at once. Okay, so because they're the same specificity, the order was what determined what's actually implemented. And here, I guess VS Code actually does some specificity here. So there's a 0, 1, 0, because there's one class here. So if we were to, okay, so right now, aqua is running because it's defined later. If we were to make this more specific, we can say it's a list item with a class of internally styled. So here you'll see that there's a 1 and then an extra 1, whereas this one is a 1 and a 0. So if we were to refresh that, the blue is more specific than the aqua. And here you see it. I don't know if they show your calculus of specificity here. And then one other thing is that inline is weighted way more. So we did a style. If we added another one, item 4. So it's doing inline. And it's matching the internal and external. So to have, yeah. Okay, so we're going to say inline style equals color pink. So inline for this pink, and you can toggle it. One of the tools, benefits of this developer tool is you can toggle it. So it takes more precedence because of it's weighted further to the left here. Okay. And then, all right, so one other thing. I don't want to do inline anymore. So the same with ID. Because it's intended to just have one, they weight it really heavy. Should I say? Okay. What's the? Uh, only one. So even if we have a style that's just so ID, so classes you use a period, ID uses pound sign, sign, hash symbol. So again, I'm running out of colors here. So this is just one one specificity. So you get the 100, and this is 011, and but the ID will still win because it's weighted heavier. So I should see it as gray. And here you see the ID winning. Now, if you happen to have, so this is really horrible way of organizing CSS. Um, um, so don't have all these overriding styles. Like, just keep it simple. Um, so if you have an ID and also a class, this is gonna have a 1 1, which should override this 1 0. And what color is there? Something starts with V. Oh, got it. So it'll override this one because there's two. There's an ID and a class. Okay, so I think that beats specificity pretty dead. The last thing is something that I found useful is, say you have multiple classes. So one's important, one's not important. Let's see, that's a horror example. What is something that can be combined? Okay, yeah. No, dang it. Okay, yeah, there you go. So let's say there's small And then there's another version of tall, but there's also, let's see, what's small? Okay, so short versus tall, and wide versus narrow. Okay. So this is short, and then this is wide. So you would imagine short will be blue, wide will be red. Okay, so short and wide, different styles. And then you come, for some reason, there's an element that is short and wide. And you can do this. And that's something that I've used quite often. So short and wide, and we'll make this purple. So here I'm combining two classes. Sometimes I combine two attributes, and you've learned about attributes, I think, maybe not. You'll learn about them here in the selectors, I thought. Here, these are attributes. So I normally use classes and attributes. Elements, like whether you use a paragraph or a list, it can change. So I tend to not use those. Classes and attributes. Attribute, I kind of use it more for like data related stuff. And the class is more for styling, but there's no set rule. It's just something that I've latched onto. I typically avoid ID and element because sometimes if you can do a button tag, or you can make a link look like a button. So whether it's an A or a button, like you can change it. So I typically avoid that. And an ID, one of something just seems, yeah. As your app gets more complex, it's hard to ensure that there's only one of it. So there's also ancestor and descendants. I think the other demonstration video goes through that. I kind of want to skip it here, save on some time. And then you can have multiple selectors. So I guess maybe briefly here. Item, this. Here's the list name. It's not being selected by any of our rules. So we want to have one rule that catches multiple selectors. We can say unordered list tags as well as list items with the internal class, and here it should show up as blue. And here it'll tell you the exact rule. So even though it'll give you the exact selector that matched it, so you can figure out how come it's getting selected. Let's see. All right. So compounding is basically what we did here. You can mix ID, tag, and class, and you can even throw in attributes. And then you can mix it with multiple selectors and also, um, descendants and children, child selectors. Okay, so I think the next thing I should go over is the box model. But before I do, any questions, comments, concerns? Can I get a mic check? Okay, thank you. All right, so box model. This is the foundation of how CSS imagines your page to be. Each element is a box, except for the inline elements. But for most part, everything's treated like a box. So you have the contents of the box, and then you have a padding between the border of your box and your content, and then margin is between the border of your element and the next element. So let's see that. So this is kind of busy. I'll just start a new page. Box model. Now, this use this again. Get rid of the styles. Okay, so again, this should be box, not styled. And here's the box model. So if you want to see, so that's the content. There's your padding, border, margin. So we don't need this anymore. Let's just do the styles internally so it's all in one place. Style. And we want to say all of the list items let's have a border around them. I forget the order, but let's do 1 pixel, black. Does that work? Oh yeah, I think what to say is it could be solid, dotted, dashed, or something. Okay, so here, even though our content is here, the box is the entire area. So yeah, so CSS and the HTML, this browser is treating your list element as this box. And let's just do some inline here. Oh, let's do this. So let's do first. So how to do attributes again? Okay. Let's see. We'll just say order equals first. Order second. Order equals third. And now fine. So let's match each one. How do we match it? Maybe there. Attribute equals. So order equals first. And we'll say background color is red. And then we'll do the same thing. Second, third, blue, and then violet. Okay, let's do aqua. So it shows up a little easier. Okay, so here you'll see the padding being the same color. The reason I want to use background so you can see the padding. So let's start adding padding of 3 pixels. So you notice that the inside of the box is getting bigger, right? And if we wanted to do it here, you could. But sometimes it's good to if you want to try out styles. Yeah, so it's more responsive instead of having to refresh a page. Okay, so you can see that's the padding getting affected, and now if we affect the margin, and if we're to play with the margin some more, and you can just see everything is being it's a box, and that with that, I think you can pretty much understand majority of CSS. Hopefully. Okay, so let's take a look. Here's the content. Here's the padding. Here's the border, and then the margin. And you notice that there's 15 pixels between the bottom of item 1 and the top of item 2. And then if we were to look at item 2, it's 15 pixels from the top of item 2 to the bottom of item 1. Because it's not 15 plus 15, it's just 15 from the next one. So we were to say, well, let's go back to 3 first. And if we were to say, let's go for the second one, margin is 5 pixels. You'll notice that this is 5, whereas the other ones is 3, and the extra white space between the tan, that's the extra 2 pixels from the item 2 margin declaration. And yeah, you can make your borders a little thicker. Any questions, comments, concerns about the box model? I think we have 10 more minutes, so let me just finish it up with the units. I think that's the next big topic. So there are two types of units. There's absolute units, which is our pixel. It's kind of like absolute. So you can think of inches. And then there's relative, right? So you can think of 2 times the size of something or 3.5 times the size of something. And it's relative to your font size. So let's just let's make margin. No, let's make border relative. Uh, okay. So as we make the font smaller, the border will adjust, but the margin and padding will stay the same. What is font size in? I guess it's in pixels. Okay, let's make font size 10 pixels. Let's do 1. No. Choose 2. Let's try to use this to make it a little faster. 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. Oh. So this might actually see it better, huh? I think at 5. It's hard to tell. But you should notice that the border is getting thicker, but the margin and padding is staying the same. So that's the intent. So it just helps with if the layout changes and you need to change the font size, the border and padding and the spacing adjust appropriately. This is kind of like when you start using Bootstrap and front-end frameworks or styling frameworks, there's this thing called responsive design, and it's the next iteration. But this is kind of the first generation of how you make a design that scales well depending on the user. So I'm wondering if I scale the font size, I don't think it's, yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's working when you manually set it. Or maybe I take off this. Hard to say, but that's the intent. Depending on what the user chooses as your font size, your layout adjusts for it. But the next iteration is the responsive design, depending on whether your user is on a mobile phone or a desktop or a large screen, it changes to match the screen size. So that's the intent. Imagine your restaurant, depending on how many patrons you have, the spacing between each table adjusts accordingly to make it just more comfortable or fit more people. Okay, questions, comments, concerns about that? someone had a question about Bootstrap, and I might have given the wrong information. It might actually be at the end of the JavaScript lecture, not the CSS lecture. So sorry about that. Or the pre-recorded lecture or demonstration. Yeah. So the Bootstrap information is at the end of the pre-recorded JavaScript demonstration. I had said it was CSS last time, so sorry about that. Anything else before I stop the video? All right. So stopping. Oh no, I stopped sharing. Stop recording. 3 clicks and stop recording locally.